Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Foundry's first webinar with Car Design News. My name is Owen Reedy and I'm the editor of CDN. For the Foundry's Modo in Automotive Design, Brad Peebler will be on hand to talk all things automotive design with special guest speakers Harold Belker and Bruce Long. Harold will take you through exploring the shape of an early design, and Bruce will focus on rendering an existing CAD design. Before we start, I'd like to remind all of you to draft up some questions for the Q&A session following this presentation. You can do this by typing them into the box on the lower right-hand side of your screen. We'll also be launching some poll questions during the presentation, which you're all invited to vote on. If you do experience any technical issues during the presentation, please do type these into the same box. But for now, I'm going to hand over to Brad to start the presentation.
Thank you, Owen. Indeed, we are going to have some great chats with Harold and Bruce. I want to give a quick high-level discussion of what Modo is and what Modo isn't, and we'll be talking about some additional technologies from the Foundry, one by the name of Colorway, which is a product that works hand-in-hand with Modo for design iteration. So there you go, just a quick overview of the agenda today, and then we'll be doing some live demoing as well, and of course plenty of time for Q&A at the end. I wanted to give a quick overview of sort of how we see the design process from talking to a lot of our clients and where we fit in. Starting on the left there from ideation, this is, as you all know, an area where it's often dominated by pen, pencil, and sketching. I know some designers have migrated over to doing even their early ideation with what I would call a sketch mesh, and Harold will be talking a bit more about that. From there we go into form hunting, which is a great area for Modo to fit in, and then digital build, where you actually start to build out a more robust and detailed model. From there we go over to the and this fits into the modeling tools of Modo. From there we've got prototype review, and that's obviously the Modo rendering engine is great for prototype reviewing, which is in the visualization category here. Variation management is very important, and this is an aspect that you can do in 3D, but it can get a little bit overwhelming, and sometimes designers don't like to be doing a lot of variation on their gold standard asset. And so we have a technology called Colorway that's a great opportunity to do some very free-form variation management. We'll be looking at that. And then, of course, at the end of the pipeline here, we have marketing asset creation, which also, of course, is very doable inside of Modo. And Bruce is going to be talking about how Modo can allow you to do that. So that's sort of how Modo fits in. And I realize this looks like it takes you clean through the entire design to market process, but what we're skipping is this little important spot here in the middle, which is, you know, I mentioned the digital build here. Of course, there's also the CAD build in the middle here. So I want to make sure that we're quite clear that this is not something that Modo does, although having your early designs in 3D done in Modo does provide a much more robust asset for the CAD engineers to work with, so that they have a much greater fidelity of your design. We hear from designers that by doing their designs inside of Modo, they maintain about an additional 30% of the control of their design intent, as opposed to just handing sketches over to a CAD engineer. It also, of course, greatly reduces the number of iterations between sketch to CAD. Okay, so we sort of see Modo as the bookends to CAD, if you will. And while Modo is technically computer-aided design by definition, I would not say that Modo is CAD. So just want to make sure we put a very fine point on that. Frankly, I'm quite bent that they've stolen CAD for engineering software, because I don't know a lot of designers who think of CAD as the design tool, but there you have it. So Modo is computer-aided design. It is not CAD. Although ModoCAD would be a cool name, wouldn't it? All right. So this is the this is sort of where we fit in on the pre-CAD side. Ideation, form hunting, and digital build. Modo is perfect for that with the modeling and rendering technologies. And then, of course, prototype review, variation management, and marketing asset creation on the visualization side. So hopefully that explains sort of where we sit in that design and engineering ecosystem. Okay, so the Modo product from a technology perspective provides modeling tools for exploring shape and form. It provides variation control using the animation system. A lot of designers are using Modo's animation to change parameters over time so they can see how their design might change in shape, form, or even color and material. And then, of course, we provide very high-end visualization technologies with our rendering. So that's a technical review. Then you have, of course, the iteration of repeating this visualization process with different materials, different colors, different combinations with colorway. So there you go. Shape and form, you're in Modo. Visualization, you're in Modo. Iteration, you can be in either Modo or in colorway. And that's sort of the high-level view of our technologies and how they fit into this process. Now I'd like to turn it over to Harold. Harold is a seasoned automotive designer who was a former concept designer for movie vehicles and is currently the current head of product design at Anki Drive. Harold has a long list of amazing credits to his name, but I'm just going to turn it over to Harold and let him explain to you how he uses Modo on the exploring shape and form process of design.
Hi, good morning, Brad, and thanks for having me. Yeah, well, that was a very well put together list of the process of design and modeling. And I have to say I was not a friend of 3D modeling for a very long time because there was only CAD. And with Modo and the polygons, the polygon modeling, that helped me see kind of the light and make that jump into 3D, which now has completely changed my world and sort of opened up this 3D instant feedback world that allows me to explore my designs very, very quickly and not having to do these endless drawings for communications with a modeler. So I think I say it all the time, thank you very much for Modo. It has completely revolutionized my world. So, Brad, you asked me to quickly walk through, the way I model or the way I sort of sketch model. And what I've put together here is just, this is really the earliest stages of how after I still do initial sketches on paper, which are just my own communication, my own sort of way of getting the things that are in my head onto paper so I can review it and then explore further. So I usually, and this is really just the way I kind of chose to model and kind of the way you put it, form hunt, where I start with just a few polygons. And I have already sketched out kind of what I wanted. So I start with a few polygons, and the key thing that I like to communicate is to keep the model in the early stages as simple as possible, because especially in automotive design, you want to keep very nice surfaces, very straight surfaces. That is absolutely key in automotive design, where you don't have wobbly things that happen much more quicker if you get very complicated with lots of polygons early on. So a lot of times I even take edges out again just to clean up the surface and then rebuild it. So let me just walk you quickly through very simple steps of the form exploration part of designing in 3D. So I start with just a few polygons, put them on the plane, and just by the tool of edge extend, I keep stretching my shape here. So you can see it's already, going to be something that looks not automotive, but in the end it will be something very simple automotive. So again, keep the polygons stretched, because there are many ways of how you can add additional polygons later on that give you that control. And the key is to keep control of your model and keep it clean. So by all the tools that are available to you, the edge extend or the proportional tool here, the scale tool, that very quickly, it's all within seconds, lets me kind of direct the way I want to go in shaping this form. And here, just with 4 additional rows of polygons, 5 when I clean it up here in the back, I have sort of established a speed shape, let's call it that. Because in many ways, it's just showing the essential of how to get this thing started and just create your basic foundation. So by subdividing, another great thing that Modo does is you have sort of softened the shape, and you get an idea what you're going to be working with. And in that state, the subdivided state, I then can move things around and manipulate the shape with instant feedback of what I want it to look like. So let's, for instance, as soon as I put some loop slices in here, here I've activated the symmetry on the x-axis, which already sounds technical, but it's a very helpful tool if you want to just review the whole model. So I just threw a loop slice in there. It tightens up those radii along the upper corner there. And again, there's so many sub-controls that allow me to review instantly what it is I'm trying to achieve here. So I can move either the additional edge to the left or the right, or I can, here on the bottom left, you see preserve curvature that works with the existing geometry and makes it nice and round without just putting a edge curve in there. Now, it's always weird to talk about the process you're going through, because basically you're doing it very quietly. You're just modeling away and trying to find your shape there. So another thing is where the polygons, they're very easy to manipulate. So I don't have to pre-design a curve like in the CAD system that I need to follow. So here, everything is up to my fingertips to move around. So if I just want to create an opening here, and you can see where I'm going with this, it's just like a little classic speed shape with a canopy in there. And I just deleted those polygons. I have a nice opening from the get-go because of the subdivision point, the subdivision tool. And once I put some edge weight on the edge along the opening here, I can just, again, extend that edge and pull it down and create a very easy opening. And again, the thing is, this is early on sketching in 3D, where within minutes, I can create shapes that I want to explore. And it never means really that I carry those shapes all the way to the end. If I like something really, then I keep that as the foundation and then keep working on top of that. So here again, if you just play with another edge loop in the back here to just create a little bit of more interest in the shape, I can only keep saying that all this exploration in 3D is really something that used to happen on paper, and now I can see in 3D right away if it works what I'm trying to do, and have this great visual feedback. So then, of course, especially for automotive designers, it is absolutely apparent that that you have a clean surface. And by using such few polygons, I can pretty much make sure very easily that all the vertices and all the edges are really following in line of a very clean surface. And if you don't believe that, then you just do quick rendering, and you can tell very quickly how clean that surface is. And from that is just a starting point again. The rendering took, I think, under 30 seconds. I just threw some colors, some materials on it. And for a designer, that sort of feedback, that sort of constantly checking up on your surfaces, building basic shapes is really the key element of how I like to work. And Brad then talked about how CAD eventually is still in the picture. So if I work on movie cars where I get to build cars very quickly in Modo for the visual process of previs. They love just simple models. They put them in their previous models, and that's how they sort of design a movie these days. Then, of course, I get to explore that shape more, do my nice Modo model, and then at some point we'll always hire a CAD guy who does the tooling model for us. Same with Anki. I get to design about 6-7 cars a year. So that is a rather quick turnaround on fully automotive shapes. And again, I take it to the modeler. Brad said that it keeps about 30% of control on the model. I would say it keeps about 90% of control because the modeler really has no wiggle room. He has the model, he can import it, and he really should. And I'm lucky that I have a couple of very good modelers that really know how to see the intent of my model and follow it. And so that process of converting something to a production model or a tooling model has become so much easier and so much less of a headache than somebody else interpreting your sketches, which have a lot of leeway. So I think I sort of talked about things that are important to me. And last but not least, I think we're going to talk more about the render engine. That is always a beautiful payoff if you as a designer can create beautiful renderings very quickly again, and you have all the materials you choose from, and really wow your clients. That's how you get the jobs. That's how you get very happy customers. So I'll turn it back over to Brad. I think you guys got the picture, I hope.
That's awesome. Thank you, Harold. And yeah, just to put a fine point on the design control, you're absolutely right. The 30% I was talking about was the 30% they typically would lose during the process of converting a sketch into CAD. But yes, definitely the designers feel like they almost get full control back.
Absolutely.
Okay, so my next panelist is the illustrious Bruce Long, who has a degree in illustration from the American Academy of Art. He has over 20 years experience in the advertising field, working in CGI and photo retouching, utilizing Modo and other programs. And Bruce is going to take us through, he's been doing a tremendous amount of work in automotive visualization. So Bruce, I'll let you take it from here and explain how you use Modo for that process.
Well, thanks, Brad. I'd like to talk about 4 things basically, and those 4 things are about rendering in Modo, pretty much the ease of use of that, and how I deal with CAD data importing, and ease of use of it in the preview. And then finally, I'd like to talk about rendering and the content, how easy it is to pull in new content to what you're doing. The reason I use Modo in the advertising business is it's fast-paced. And let me see if I can get this. There we go. It's pretty fast-paced in advertising. When you're trying to get something done, they're looking at something, being done in a couple of days. If you're lucky, you get a couple of weeks to work on a project. But Modo has made it really easy to do that. It's one of those 3D packages that's just really robust but easy to use. And over the years, I've used quite a few different programs. I've tried to use Maya. Cinema 4D, and it just took so long to use. And I figured, you know what, I'm going to give up on 3D as much as I love it. But then somebody gave me a version of 101, I think it was, of Modo. And I actually bought my first version, which is 202, or 201, and really got into modeling and doing different things with it, and found it to be really easy to use. So I loved it a lot. You know, it's easy to go in there and tweak whatever you want to do. How I deal with CAD data, you know, bringing that in, it's really simple. I mean, you basically, you know, use Power Translator, you import your file into it. You've got a couple settings here, and then it's boom, it's in there. CAD data is so easy to use, so easy to bring in. And I've used CAD Loader, and I've used other programs where you sat there and laboriously went through the process, you know, exported out the information, brought it in, see if it works, go back, do the same process over again, find out it doesn't work, keep on going back, and there's just a lot of time. But now with Modo having Power Translator, it's made to use. The next thing I would like to talk about is the ease of use in the preview. You know, when you're actually sitting there doing something, and it seems like we're going a little too fast here. There we go. Nope, we're jumping around.
I got it. Here, why don't I get you back there real quick? I think you're looking for that one.
Yeah, this one right
there.
here.
Okay.
So the preview window will give you a really great example of what you're working on. So when you're working on these files and you quickly want to see what you're doing, you've got this information right in front of you. You can look at, you can mouse over an area, and you can actually start to see more detail that you want to see, especially when you're doing color, you know, looking to see how that actually is going to pop, you know, seeing if you've got the right texture and you're tweaking things. That preview window is just key to whatever you're doing, and Modo just makes it so easy to do. It's a great tool. So that's really fast. Anytime you're taking your camera, moving your camera around, you get quick updates, and then when you're in advertising, that's so key. I can actually sit there and let that render for a little bit, and if I've got a client that pops in and says, hey Bruce, I want to see that file, and I want to see what it looks like so far, I can go in and just go under and snapshot that preview from within Modo and hand it off to the client, and they can see a quick result, which is really key to your timing and getting things done out for advertising. The next thing I'd like to talk about is rendering and content. Go to this next window here. The real key thing that I love to do is once I've made all my shaders, is actually, you can see there right in the middle, there's an alpha channel. And whenever I'm dealing with a client, they're wanting to see color changes. And the way I work is I basically, within each one of these channels that I have, say for the body part, I put an alpha channel in there. So if they say they like the color of the product that I'm doing or the car, but they want to change it and tweak it a little bit, I can do that in Photoshop on the fly, make a change. Now Colorway will actually do that as well. You can do some things in there, but this is typically the way I work. And it really helps out when the client says, last minute, I want to change something. Sometimes I'll throw a normals pass in there and other channels in there that will render out these passes. And later on I'll show you the power of like a normals pass that really, you know, you can go on the fly and change things. And I'm having a little bit of a problem with my control. There we go. The other really cool thing is once you own Modo and you become a member, really get on the forums. You know, the share site is so awesome because when you go to the share site, there's so many things you can pull to add to your scene. You know, you can add plants and trees and other products and things to make that scene look even better. I mean, even getting on the forums, I was able to actually go on the forum and find this HDR dome that I added to one of my scenes that just made the job go a whole lot quicker. It looked a lot cleaner, a lot nicer. I got good lighting. And it's just one of those things people are really willing to share. I get on the forum all the time and I share things and knowledge that I know with other people, so that when you're doing a project, if you've got a question and you want to know something, there are people out there to help you, and they can actually get you a little bit further on. Whereas if you're in any other community, if you're in the Maya community, which I have not heard of, I don't know of anybody that really shares information. That they're always, you always have to buy information from them. You have to get training from them. But the Foundry has been really good about sharing information with people. Brad's been great about that. You get on and listen to the Modcast, and there's so many people sharing things all the time. It's one of the best sites. It's really what got me into doing a lot of 3D, is that there were people there to help me along the way to do great visualization of products for advertising. And that's one of the things I really love to give back to the community. And whenever somebody's got a question, they call me up. I've had people from all over the world call me and say, "Hey, Bruce, how do I do this?" And I just walk them through the process. And it's just a good sharing experience. So if you ever got a question about doing something, there's always an answer out there for you. The next thing is that you've got all the stuff and you're ready to render. You put everything together in Modo, and you can see that it can be pretty quickly put together. The nice thing about Modo is that the moment you open up the program, it opens up a document. It has a light, it has a camera, it's ready, set, and go. You import your image into there, your CAD information, it's there. You start throwing textures into it, boom, it's there. But the next thing you need is this big project. It's got a 4K project that has to be printed out. So I need a render farm. Well, Modo's made it really easy to put a render farm together too. You essentially take your 801 or whatever you're working in, throw it on each one of your machines. I've got an iMac here. I have a Mac Mini. I have 2 laptops, and I have an unmanaged network. I've got them all plugged in. All I have to do is go in my preferences, set it up, so I have network rendering set up. Then I can go to each one of my machines, click on slave mode, boom, I'm ready to go. I can start rendering, and once I start rendering, I just watch the buckets go. So my render starts coming out, I get a file out fairly quickly, I meet my deadline, and I'm good to go. So I was talking about some of the render passes. A normal pass is one of the most crucial things I use all the time, especially in visualization. If I'm putting a car in a background and I need to show it, but the lighting of the background is slightly different from what I tried to match in Modo, I can use my normals pass, which is an RGB channel. And as you see those RGB channels, you can see the lighting. It's almost like a lighting effect. You've got a left effect, a top effect, and a right effect. And on the top half of this, you can see how I've lit it, where you can change the lighting. Now the shadow is the one issue that I have. You have to make a change on your own on that. But at least you can start to get that object a little bit better into your scene. So it's actually a little bit lit nicer. So if your background actually changes in color too, you can use it as a rim light on the edge too. And you can use like the blue channel, tweak it, a curve on it, so it actually tightens up a little bit quicker, and then you can get a blue edge on there that'll actually match it in. So that's just kind of a quick overview of how I use Modo and how exciting it can be. Here's some visualization of some of the things I've used with backgrounds and with Modo. And I'll turn it back over to Brad.
Thank you very much, Bruce. That was excellent. All right, thanks to both of you guys, actually. Those are really enlightening presentations. So the next thing I want to do is do a couple of, actually I'm just going to sit here and look at those images because they're so beautiful. The next thing I wanted to do was actually do a little bit of actual in the product review. I've got a short video clip done by our own Andy Brown, who's a fantastic digital modeler. And a couple years ago I asked him, what he thought was great about Modo for automotive modeling, and so he put this little short video together that I'm going to show you. Let's just hop over there.
Reference drawings and sketches can be quickly brought into a scene by dragging and dropping from a browser. Once loaded, they are treated like any other item in the scene and can be quickly assigned to specific viewports, as well as being manipulated by regular transform tools. If the image contains embedded alpha, it will result in transparency in the 3D viewport. And once loaded, images can be adjusted to make them easier to use. For example, contrast can be changed or transparency added. Mesh items are containers for geometry. Modeling in Modo is a process of filling these containers and organizing them in a way you see fit. Geometry can exist in these containers in any form or in any combination of forms, giving you a workbench approach to modeling. Geometry can be connected or unconnected, subdivided or unsubdivided, polygons or curves. Your job is to rip them apart, glue them together, or separate them. This lack of technical overhead means Modo is perfect for sketch modeling. It's a direct approach, allowing you to concentrate on creating shapes and forms and exploring how those forms interact with each other. These sketch models can then be utilized as reference models for more technical modeling further down the pipeline, or rendered out to be painted on. The topology pane is a multifunctional tool that allows you to quickly map out the key aspects of a design with polygons. Once some geometry exists in your scene, edges and points can be quickly extended and welded to develop a cage that follows your design. By changing settings, other operations are possible. For example, edges and edge loops can be added to an existing mesh to increase the resolution of the cage, and edges and edge loops can also be slid through the mesh to adjust their position relative to the location of adjacent edge loops. It's the perfect tool for following the lines of a design and generating a mesh that will deform naturally later on in the process. Fall-offs are tool modifiers that modulate the effect of a transform. They allow you to shape a polygon cage in a controlled yet intuitive way. Many fall-off types are available. Linear creates a gradient of influence across the plane as drawn, allowing you to shape a cage by applying shearing effects to edge loops. Cylinder creates a tube of influence perpendicular to the plane it's drawn on, and is perfect for shaping rooflines, bumpers, hoods, trunks, and many other aspects of a car's exterior or interior. One important feature of fall-offs is they are live when a transform is added, so once polygons have been moved, the fall-off can be adjusted, allowing you to subtly tweak the shape. It also persists in the viewport, but other tools can be used on the model using the same defined fall-off area. A subdivision surface is a smooth surface derived from a polygon cage. It's an elastic and forgiving surface that is easy to manipulate. When the tab key is pressed, the faceted cage is smoothed on the fly. When the tab key is pressed again, the cage is restored. The beauty of a subdivision surface is the curves are calculated automatically, allowing for parts to be bridged quickly and easily, resulting in a smooth join. Because the surface is derived from the underlying cage, there is little interdependence on the model, allowing for sections to be removed or edited with little or no effect on the rest of the surface. Pressing Shift-Tab converts a surface to a P-sub or pixel subdivision surface. This is a more sophisticated form of subdivision that allows you to sharpen edges. This allows you to easily define the expression lines of a design once the cage is subdivided. Fall-offs can be used to apply the sharpening effect to create blending, and once applied, the weighted edges can be easily manipulated to subtly adjust the shape of the lines and the curves. When developing a design, parts of previous designs can be reused by creating mesh presets. Wheels, switches, and other control surfaces can be quickly brought into the scene and either positioned manually or snapped to surfaces. In combination with preview, material, and environment presets can also be applied to a model, allowing you to quickly visualize your design in context. The more you work in Modo, the bigger this library of assets will become. Old designs can be quickly re-evaluated, edited, and worked upon to create fast iterations. Modo's render engine includes many functions that are particularly useful when it comes to concept design. Render booleans cut away sections of a model at render time. The cutter can either be a primitive or another piece of geometry, and they're particularly useful for defining wheel arches when shaping the side of a vehicle. When fleshing out an idea, you don't want to get bogged down in the more technical aspects of polygon modeling. Often you just need to see how a hard point might come together without going through the process of physically joining disconnected surfaces. The rounded edge width function allows you to do this. All you have to do is intersect two or more objects and set the radius. The geometry is then rendered as if the two pieces are joined. Morph maps are relative offset values from a point or collection of points. They allow you to create an unlimited number of alternative shapes for a mesh, and if the base mesh is altered, all of the morph maps will update to reflect the change. Morphs allow you to iterate a design non-destructively. For example, the line of a roof can be altered a number of times, and when the final shape is decided upon, the morph values for that shape can be baked down to the base model.
All right, so there's just a little bit from Mr. Andy Brown on what he thinks is great about modeling for automotive in Modo. I will say that more and more we're hearing from design firms and organizations using CAD who are employing poly modeling in their process. Modo has been on the market for a little over 10 years and has been well established in the area of modeling as the best polygon and subdivision surface modeling tool set. So any company who's looking to bring poly modeling into their CAD workflows should definitely be looking at Modo. One thing we haven't mentioned, Bruce did mention that you can import CAD models with the Power Translator plugin. We also have the Power Sub-D to NURBS export plugin, which allows you to take a subdivision surface model and save that out as a NURBS or solids mesh, which can then be brought into applications like SolidWorks for as a starting point. So that's a really nice process to go between to bring CAD data into Modo and also to get data out of Modo and into CAD. I just wanted to show you a couple examples of working inside of Modo so you can get a feel for, obviously it covers a lot of breadth, a lot of scope. It is deep, it is wide, it is sort of your Swiss Army knife of content creation or design exploration, whether you're pre-CAD or post-CAD. And sometimes tools that have that much scope can be arduous or difficult to use. Some of the workflows that Bruce showed indicate that you can really take this a long way in terms of just how deep you want to go. And I'm going to show you, for those who want to get in and get out, how quickly you can work in Modo. So this is the what we would call the render tab inside of Modo. Modo is broken down into kind of logical workflow points. Another area we haven't really talked much about is retopology, for those of you who might want to bring in a CAD asset and then remesh it to have a poly mesh for simulation, that sort of thing, or even for visualization. So we do have a workflow for that built in. So these tabs kind of take you through modeling, painting, sculpting, topology, UV editing for texturing, scene layout, animation, rendering, etc. So the rendering process is very much a visual experience. You can, as Bruce showed you, you can work over here in the shader tree. These are essentially like masks that you would find in Photoshop that are defined in Modo by polygon groups, which sort of make them procedural or persistent, automatically updating masks on your image. If I wanted to, change one of these, I can just click actually in the preview. I can right-click on it, and I can see all of the layers in the shader tree that make up the pixel that I've clicked on. So there's the body material. Now you see it's found that for me in the list. So you don't have to wade through this list. You can just come right over here and select those things directly. If I want to change that material, you have your parameters over here that you can work with. So if I just say you wanted to change the color quickly, you have a nice color wheel, and you can see that updates very quickly. It's not a very realistic looking car there, so we'll just add a little bit of reflectivity, and you go from there. You can continue to kind of build this out. If I wanted to make this the windshield, you can go in there and set up some parameters here. But not everybody wants to fiddle with these values, and that's why we have this very nice preset system where you can literally just drag and drop materials from the browser into your project. And you see that Modo does come with a very large set of materials. So if you go in here, some car paints you can scroll through. If you find one you like, you just drag it and you drop it up in there. Another thing that Bruce mentioned was the ability to create these alpha masks. I should also mention, just from a performance perspective, I'm running on a 2-year-old MacBook Pro. We try to make Modo as fast as possible, even on older hardware. The performance we're seeing here is hampered a little bit by the GoToWebinar software. But very quickly we get a fairly photorealistic image just by dragging a few materials around. And Bruce was showing the very cool ability to put alpha channels into any of your masks. So if I take this alpha output here and I drag it right down into the glass container, I can change my preview to show me the alpha channel. So now you can see there's the matte that when I save my image would come from that alpha channel. And I can drag that up into the grill here, and now you have an alpha channel for the grill. And of course, you can duplicate that alpha channel as many times as you want. There are lots of different types of output buffers that you can use to prepare a project to be taken into Photoshop and further manipulated. So for the power user, this is great because you can really get in there and you have a tremendous amount of control over the output and the design with the rendering tools. But not everybody wants to become a rendering expert. Not everybody wants to become a compositing expert. And sometimes you'll have a situation where you may have one or two 3D experts that are good at setting up projects, but you want to pass that over to a designer to do colorways or to do design iterations, or maybe you just don't want them working on the core data. And that's where we have this tool called Colorway here. So let me go back over to my current final output. So you'll see with Colorway, we get this little tab. It installs a little. When you install it, it's a kit for Modo that installs these controls here inside of Modo, and it's also a standalone application. And what this allows us to do is to predefine what things we want Colorway to be able to edit. So you can come in here and you can select a particular material and then tell it to only tag the selected materials. So if you wanted to pass this off to a Colorway designer for a seasonal design change or a new model design change, you may only want them to have control over the some of the interior materials, some of the paint materials, and some of the rubber materials. You can tag those directly, or you can tag all of materials. You can also tag and remove lights in the project, and once you do that, you tell it to render the scene for Colorway, and then you just hop on over into your Colorway application, and here's that same vehicle that's been textured and rendered out as a Colorway file. And now you can see you have a similar workflow that you had inside of Preview, but when I click on this here, I can drag this, and you notice that it's full quality all the time in real time. So essentially what we've done is we've kind of baked in a lot of intelligence into this special, what we call deep color image that allows us to make these edits on the fly. So I can change color. I can create a new color down here, and then start to work on that like this. And you see it starts to add these little swatches here, and now I can switch between those so I can kind of evaluate what those designs are going to look like. Once I have a color family set up that I like, I can save that as a look, and that's going to come over here. Here's one that was just a black and white look, and then I'm back to my original. Additionally, as I showed you inside of Modo with Colorway, you can tag the lights. So if I just, let's go ahead and let's see, I kind of like the black and white version. I'm going to select this first one and gang select down to the bottom and just drag all the lights down just to be a bit dramatic. And now let's go over here and just start to drag one light up at a time. So you can see, lighting in 3D to do photorealistic lighting can be a time-consuming process. But with Colorway, once I've kind of cooked in the base lighting from inside of Modo, I can now go in here and in real time explore those settings, and you can see that I can create very dramatic changes very quickly. This is the overall kind of global illumination. Again, that's all real time. If you wanted to go over here and kind of tint a light, you can do that. So we want to make it a little bit warmer. You can do that. We can go in and put a little warm light on the front and a little cool light on the back. And the interesting thing about this sort of psychologically, if you will, is that from a designer perspective, when you've spent all of your time, to build up this very nice looking 3D asset, a lot of times you're loath to go in and just start making a bunch of changes because file management can get to be a hassle. Well, with Colorway, I can make all these changes. I'm abstracted one level away from my data. I can do it all in real time. I can save these out as looks. I can also go in and do some image kind of post-processing where we, say we want to add some camera dispersion and some lens distortion and just, kind of make it look a bit more photorealistic. And once I've got an image that I'm happy with, we can go back up and export this back to 3D. So the changes that we've made on all these looks will magically appear inside of Modo by doing a import looks. And each one of those looks that we have over here will come into Modo as what we call a render override, so that you can then export those as very high quality final renders. That's a nice example of that running on an exterior. Let me show you also how this affects the process on interiors. Now, interiors for visualization are even more challenging because the bounced light and the subtleties of an interior can take a long time to render. And so again, here you can see that very quickly we can go in and choose an area and just make a change, and you see that in real time without having to do any waiting. And the same thing goes for the lighting, which is one of the most complicated processes of an interior. Now you can just pull this down. So we just want to bring up the passenger side. So you get a really very interactive approach to working with an asset. And again, you've got all of your ability to do your looks. Another really interesting component of Colorway is that it does support images. So you can see that the little console here, as we're switching between different looks, also has different images in that little palette. And then there's also a special mode in Colorway that's called presenter mode. So if you are the designer and you're working on all of these different looks, but you need to send it off to a decision maker to say which one they like the most, Colorway would be a great way to do that, except that you don't want to send your manager the ability to go in and have a color wheel, because that would be a disaster. What you want to do is you want them to only see the things that you have authored to change. So you can create a little color palette like we did earlier, and then when you send it to them, you can tell it to only view in presenter mode. And now when they select that, they don't get a color wheel. They can only come in here, and it gives them limited control, just enough control to feel like they're having some input, but not enough control to really screw up your design. Okay, so that's a little bit about Colorway. And you can see there's a pretty robust ecosystem around Modo for designers, whether you are doing early shape and form exploration, whether you are doing post-CAD visualization, or anything in between. One thing I didn't mention that I probably should have was that in this, in the Modo 3D environment, because this is more than just loading high dynamic range images for lighting, you have a complete, 3D workspace. So if we came over here, and let me just grab, I think this is the environment that has our image that's doing the lighting. If I turn off that image, you can see now we're only getting a tiny bit of light from the environment here. What I'm going to do is bring up my modeling tools, and this is why it's important that all these tools are part of the same system. Instead of going into one system to do your modeling and another system to do your lighting, I can just go in, and I'm going to create a quick material on that polygon. And there it is. I'm just going to move this over a little bit. Okay, so you can see I've turned off the lights in my scene here, and now I'm just going to give this polygon some intensity. And now you can see I can literally sculpt in or model in the lighting. So if I'm going to grab my sculpting tools here and grab sculpting move and just grab a nice smooth brush here, I can literally now start to go in and just kind of sculpt my light, kind of wrap it around the scene there. Let me go back into, there we go. If we wanted to do something like a bend, we can bend that. We can rotate it. So you can really kind of shape, how your lighting is going to affect the scene. Let me turn off my current layer overlay. There we go. And the importance of this over using only high dynamic range images for lighting is that if you think about how you light in the real world, the power of lighting or a light falls off at the inverse square of the distance. There's a very natural fall off to lighting. and you don't necessarily get that same quality of light when you wrap a scene with some high dynamic range image that's often an infinite distance from the model. With using images for light, or rather using meshes for lighting, you can see as I move it in closer, the intensity goes up with the inverse square of the distance, which is a natural response to light that you'd expect to get if you were in a photo studio shooting a car. So just a quick note I wanted to put on that. And now I think we are right into our Q&A, 10 minutes. So there you go. I will say thank you to Harold and to Bruce for joining us today, and thank you all attendees for giving us your time. Does anybody have any questions?
Hi Brad, thank you very much for that. Very, very interesting presentation. As Brad says, absolutely we're now open to questions from the audience. If you have any, we already have a couple waiting. If you have any questions, please do type them into the box on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. But in the meantime, we're actually going to ask some poll questions from the audience. So just for a couple of minutes, we're just going to gather some data for this. So if you can all just kind of click on the relevant answers, please. So the first one, what design packages do you use?
Hey Brad, I'd like to just say that the last thing that you showed was really interesting. Typically with photography, and I've also done some photography, you put in a flag, and the last thing that you showed in there, that you can manipulate a flag, and what you're doing is really key to making something and forming a shape, especially in cars where you want that light to stream across the chrome or stream across the paint job. And that's a technique that I use all the time. I do a lot of bottles as well, so glass is like that. And typically when you go into a photography studio, they're putting flags and they're shooting about 5 or 6 different shots. And then in retouching, going in and combining those 5 to 6 shots and making one image out of it. And Modo is really nice because when you do that, you can place that flag exactly where you want it, and I can get one shot at one time. And I've told my clients before that, you know, when you're doing it in Photoshop, you know, and a photographer, there's a lot of time and money. In Modo, you're just doing it quickly, straight out of the box. You can pretty much do it in a short amount of time.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and you know, having a complete environment, a complete 3D environment, as opposed to just wrapping your design with a high dynamic range image, means you have a lot of the same capabilities that you would have in a studio. Aside from just putting flags up, you can also build in things that will cast shadows or things that will block the light. You can build a grid of meshes to create interesting shadows and place that in your project. And Bruce, I appreciated that you showed the share site, because a lot of times, when you're presenting a design, you want to show it in some actual context that kind of gives it some emotional context. But you may not want to actually spend the time to model out a complete environment. So being able to take your design, quickly go to the asset site, which is free, download some existing plants or background elements, and just drag and drop those into your project, really does allow you to create a much more robust and interesting visualization to kind of help present the essence, the mind's eye view of what you're trying to communicate about your design, as opposed to just here's something that looks like a photograph.
Oh, and absolutely. I mean, and just getting on the forum too. Sometimes people don't even put those assets in the shared assets, but they share some of their things that they're doing, in the forums, and they'll put a link to, hey, I've got this, check it out. What do you think? I got an ice cube once from somebody that put it together on the forum, and it wasn't on the shared site. And just because I was on the forum, I was able to download that, use that, and actually use it in a project that I was using. And it was just awesome. And I just pulled it apart and learned from it, especially the shaders. I mean, just even from the shared site, if you pull those shaders over and just learn from those, it's a great tool, I think.
Yeah, I'd like to add something too. It really is true. The whole community of that it's involved with Modo, it's just second to none, and the sharing and the experience. And even if you have some more difficult questions, I've contacted Andy Brown, who is just in a league on his own, and I always cry a little bit after getting off the phone with him, how much he knows, So, but it's true. I like to also say colorway. I mean, that is now that I watched it again. I mean, that is the beauty of the whole community with the Foundry, that you guys keep adding these unbelievable tools and programs continuously to what we can work with, And I mean, how easy have you made it to view different colors and different lighting? Just if I just think of what I have to go through sometimes to show my Anki cards in all the different colors, it's not a difficult process, but it's still time consuming if you go in and change the colors all the time. So with colorway, I mean, now you made it, an experience again that is straightforward and easy. And for that is just one of the greatest things about the whole thing.
Oh yeah, that's one of those things I was so impressed by it, I'm going to go out and buy it now. I mean, I've got to test it out because, the way I do it, it's so complicated, in a sense. I mean, it's not complicated because I'm used to it and I do it all the time, but I'm so enamored by it, I'm like, oh, I got to get this now. It's another tool I need to get.
Guys, we have some questions from the audience now. If you'd like to take those, we've done the polls. So we'll have a few minutes to go through these. So the first one we have is, when we finish modeling in Modo, is it possible to transfer surfaces to CAD applications like CATIA V5?
It's an interesting, yes, that's the Power Sub-D to NURBS product, which you can add to Modo. Does a really nice job of taking a subdivision surface and converting it into a NURBS patch. And it has some interesting controls where you can kind of guide where it's going to create those patch boundaries by assigning material boundaries inside of Modo. It's not a magic bullet, but it does a really nice job for a lot of cases. Also, you'll see more and more, subdivision surfaces are becoming very fashionable in the CAD realm, and a lot of CAD applications are adding subdivision surface tools to their workbench. It's great to see the technology making its way there, and Modo is still leagues beyond in terms of workflow. The great thing is it does mean that more and more subdivision surface models that you build inside of Modo will have compatibility with your CAD application, aside from doing translation.
Great, thanks for that. The next one is from Carter Hickman, and the question is, well, actually it's more of a statement. I'd love to see a web-based colorway presenter. Is that something that currently exists, or something that maybe you're thinking about?
That is not something that currently commercially exists. We don't talk too much about future releases, but I will say that is a really interesting idea. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Okay, great. So it's a case of watch this space. Another one from Matthew Cunningham. If you're migrating from Alias Studio tools to Modo, how do you maintain the same level of precision managing engineering data, etc.? So it's more of a migration question.
Yeah, it's a good question, a fair one as well, because Alias is an interesting beast in that it sort of does fit into the designer category, but also has sort of attributes of a CAD system. You need to think of Modo as something different than Alias. I wouldn't say that Modo is trying to replace Alias. I would say Modo is augmenting your pen and your paper. And while Alias is very powerful, it is still fairly complex. Modo is a much more direct modeling approach, and as a subdivision surface modeler, it doesn't have the type of class surfaces that a NURBS package will. So you just have to sort of reset your thinking about. I know it's easy to look at Modo and say it's 3D, therefore it's like my CAD product or like my Alias product, but it's really a direct modeling experience that's enhancing or replacing sketching more so than a Class A surfacer.
Okay, I think we've answered that one. The next one is from Florian Hartmann. Hi guys, I am an industrial design student from Germany. Modo is totally new to me and I would like workflow very much. Now my question, how do I get the software if my university doesn't have it? So I suppose the question is there a student version of this software currently?
I recommend organizing student protests at your school. Use Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Get cardboard and make signs and go to your headmaster and demand that they stop the tyranny of lack of Modo. There is an educational license of Modo. Head on over to modo3d.com, www.modo3d.com. You can download a trial. And there is an educational version. I believe it is $179 if you qualify for that. So it's a very inexpensive way to get into Modo. But definitely download the trial and give it a go.
Okay, so either stump up $179 or create a riot. I think that's probably pretty good advice.
Or both.
The next question is from Akos Boros. Hi, I'm working in the automotive industry as a polygon modeler and I would love to use Modo, but it's not compatible with .wire files. There's no support for importing curves from Alias or CATIA. So I don't know if it's not really a question, it's more of a statement, but I don't know if you have a response to that.
Absolutely. You know, there are a lot of file formats that are important to different markets, and .wire is certainly high on the list for us to add support for. Modo is not a NURBS modeler, so we don't have a sort of NURBS primitive. When you bring in assets through the CAD loaders, the power translators, you do have the ability to see the curves. As opposed to bringing in a tessellated mesh. It'll bring in a procedural mesh. That doesn't specifically solve your .wire problem, but it is a way to kind of to bridge the gap. And we're always looking for adding additional formats. We have a very good partnership also with the folks at IntegrityWare, who are kind of leaders in the area of CAD translation. So hopefully we can add support for standards like .wire in the future.
Okay, great. We're kind of out of time now, but there are plenty more questions waiting here, and what we're going to do is forward those questions on to Brad, Harold, and Bruce and the guys at Modo to answer later on. But for now, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you to the Foundry and Modo for such an informative webinar. If you would like any more information, do head over to modo3d.com. In the meantime, you can access this and any of the previous webinars under the Processes tab on the Car Design News homepage. So thanks again for joining us today, and we hope that you'll join us again in the future for our next webinar. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.